Hey everybody, we're outside again today, and I had someone make a comment on the show just the other day. That is a really important one because a lot of people are thinking about this, and I want to dig into it. And that is that they bought, about 5 years before they went into retirement, they bought a home, in their case in Honduras, but we're here in Nicaragua. But the idea is the same, coming down, scouting out a place, and getting it ahead of time for your retirement. A lot of people think this is a great idea, and a lot of people, I think, are very excited to do that. And so is that a good idea? Is this something you should be doing for you? And of course, as is generally the case, nothing is a single answer. We have to dig into what it really means and why you should consider one way or another. But I think it's an important discussion because some people have such amazing success with this, and some people really regret having done this. So what may be factors into successful versus not successful pre-purchasing or pre-discovery of a home, preparing a retirement home for the future? We're going to talk about that on today's show. I'm Scott L. Miller. I've been living in Nicaragua for nearly 5 years continuously. I've been living abroad for a very long time. I'm a full-time expat and now an immigrant here in Nicaragua. Before we dig into today's show, first, this is Leon, Nicaragua, and it is very hot. We're 36 degrees. We're 99. We're in the hottest little bit of the year. It's the one time that we're really noticeably warmer than the rest of the year, so we're kind of dying. But I'm in the shadows, and it's just fine. We have a little bit of a breeze, which hopefully you guys, I don't think you'll be able to hear, and it feels actually pretty nice. But in the house where the wind's not moving around, we feel it a bit. It's kind of a bit. So I actually have had the air conditioning on quite a bit today. So before we dig in too much, get in those show notes and check out. We got a number of things for you. One, how to contact me. Two, how, if you have any, want to support the show or anything, everything's in there. If you want to look at our social media, whether it's my photographs of life here in Nicaragua or Instagram and Nicagram, which is pixel fed, and Nicaloro, which is Mastodon, all those kinds of accounts are down there. Go check that out. Good stuff. On Thursdays, we do live streams almost every Thursday. Really fun, really great way to connect with people. Please consider joining us on there. We have a GoFundMe for my producer who has stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. We're helping raise money to help her support her family as she goes through chemotherapy, which she is at as I do this video. And, of course, get those show notes, ask questions, and all that. And if you want to send in a video of yourself, every bit of instruction on how to do that well is in the show notes. You can send that in and be on the show. We love it when people do that. Okay, so this was a great topic, I think, because so many people are looking at retirement being why they're coming to a country like Nicaragua. We'll talk about Nicaragua, but this really applies to pretty much anywhere. And of course, we talk quite often about people getting very excited and wanting to start investing in their future home really early. And for some people, this is going to be great. And obviously, on the positive side, I think most people jump directly to why it's positive, right? Well, I'm going to get down, I'm going to do my research, I'm going to get a house early. The earlier you own a house, the more value you get out of it, and so forth. And you're going to have it already, right? Maybe for a lot of people, you're going to come down and visit it. Let's say you get it 5 years, like they said in the example, before you retire. Let's say you're going to retire at 65. You get the place at 60, but maybe you vacation over the next 5 years to Nicaragua in this case and visit your own house. You have time to start setting it up, thinking about how you're going to use it, collecting furniture, artwork, bringing down supplies from the country that you're coming from, US, Canada, whatever, and stocking the house with things that you don't need every day, but you'd like to have for your forever home, right? You can bring those down a little bit at a time and figure out exactly what works for you. There's a lot of advantages here. Slowly over time, you'll start to get to know the community that you're in. You'll know some of the regulars that come down like you. You'll know some of the people who are here full time, and you'll start inching your way into the community without having to make a huge leap all at once and kind of have a culture shock of wow, we have no friends. We just moved. We have to make all new friends. No, instead, it's like you're on vacation, but you start making friends. And then when you finally move, you have all these people you already know. And we know people like here in our community who've done exactly this, and we're just coming to the end of that process as we move down. And so we've seen this happen, and it has obviously, it takes very little explanation to make it clear why that has a lot of value. You've got your house all lined up, you've had time to prep it, you've had time to ease into the community, and you've learned a lot of things about it without having to jump in both feet all at once and just, wow, right? The impact of that can be really big. So I think it's easy to make you excited about doing that. And that's why so many people have done it and found such success with it. There's so many pros, right? So great, but there are cons and there are risks, and it's important to evaluate. So what are those risks? So a couple things. One, if you're buying early, that means you're investing in a place you're not prepared to use. Now, some people are going to point out, well, we'd love to do Airbnb and maybe make some money on the house while we're not living there. And that's a great idea if you're prepared for all of what it takes to run a business, and a single house as a business business can be a lot of overhead for very little payback, right? You're going to have people to take care of it because you're not going to be there to do it, presumably, at least most of the time. You're going to have to block off time for yourself to use it. You're going to have to worry about people living in your house, maybe damaging the house that you live in, not like an Airbnb that you have pristine and set aside for Airbnb. This is a place that is your house. You want it to be maintained for you. So that could be a negative. You got to pay people to maintain it. So there's money there. And so at the end of the day, you might be able to offset quite a lot of the cost of keeping the house, but you're unlikely to really make any money. And there is risk that you will lose money through all this or have damage to the house, which results in kind of losing money. So those are things to consider. A lot of people think there's just this magic panacea of I'm just going to Airbnb it and that will just solve things. And that is not necessarily the case. It might work. It's not that is not a good thought process. And certainly it may offset things, but it may not offset enough. That may be the biggest thing, right? It may offset 50% or 80%, but it's challenging to completely pay for the process through that alone with a single property especially when you're new, right? Now, let's get into your new thing. For most people, when we're talking about moving to a new country, and we talk about Nicaragua all the time, one of the things that we're very adamant about is you want to come down and live for quite some time before you start making permanent decisions. This is something that's very challenging if you're buying a house ahead of time. If you're wanted, at 60 to buy a house. Now, if you've been coming down since you're 40 and you put in a little bit of time over a long period of time, you may have a really broad knowledge of the country already and just be in great shape. And you don't need any of that additional protection because you've put in the research, you've been in all the different towns, you've spent enough time that you can make those decisions. Sure, that is viable. But for many people, you're coming down and looking to buy that house before you've moved, and you don't want to put in years and years or huge blocks of time of doing that research into, do I really want to live at the beach? Do I really want to live in the mountains? Do I really want to live in the city? Do I really want to live in the country? And so forth. And finding just the right community and just the right neighborhood and just the right so forth. And that's where you get dangerous. People who are investing in their retirement homes early typically are going to rush into that purchase and then build their lives with the purchase of the house driving their life decisions, which includes who will be their neighbors, what the local grocery store situation is like, what the local restaurant selection is like, and so forth. Whereas people who are going the opposite direction, people who are moving down and putting in some time renting, maybe a couple of years, just say 2, and living maybe in a couple different communities, trying things out, they're more likely to let their lifestyle drive their decisions and then eventually purchase a house that's in exactly where they think they want to be. Nearly everyone, not all, but nearly everyone that I know who buys before the end of their first year, between 1 and 2 years, you get a decent success rate. But buying in that first year, and especially in those first days, right, has nearly 100% failure rate, meaning they are unhappy with their purchase. Obviously, quite often they purchase in the wrong location and end up not liking where they are. And also, most people rushing into it pay way too much. And the thought process is if you buy early, you're more likely to get the market when it's low, which right now is a viable conversation, and that it will only go up. Real estate makes money over time, so you want to get in as early as possible. That's not quite true. You want to watch the waves, but right now is a good time to get in, so that would be meaningful right now. But they have a tendency to not be able to do the market research. And so while the market may be super low and you find a house that you're really excited about and it's at $100,000, you think it'll go up to $200,000, and you jump in now because you want to invest early and it's just a beautiful spot. You'll put up with whatever community limitations come along later because you love the spot and you want to lock it in now for $100,000. Then 5 years later, when you move down and you spend time, and this happens to nearly every expat I know who has done this, they then eventually find out that the house was only worth $50,000 and they actually paid double, and they may never be around long enough in the community for it to get back up to the value that they originally purchased it at. Even though they bought it when the market was at a low, they didn't pay the market price, and that brings the problem. So that's a big issue. People who are here for a few years generally have a good handle, or at least the beginning of a good handle, on what market prices might be, and they have an idea of what things are or are not selling for, where they can get good deals, where, what ripoffs look like, what it's going to feel like when you're paying too much, and so forth. They'll at least have a much better starting point. Their chances of getting a good price is way better, and you'll just get better with time. And at some point, it's a point of no additional return. So you diminishing returns. You want to purchase at some point, but you do want to give yourself enough that you're not being gringo price, you're not just being tricked about what the market value is. You want to see other properties sell and be purchased over time so you can see what trends are like and see how people react to, you paid how much for that? Do you realize so-and-so last year paid half that for the place next door that's twice as big? Wait, what? Right? Now, all that information is really useful. You basically only get it by being in a community over time. And so that's an important thing. So there's a lot of reasons why waiting is important. And it's, if you're going to buy early, you want to be in a position where you can mimic having waited, meaning you've done your research, gotten to know the community and all those things before you get to the point of buying early, which is fine to buy early. I bought early. I'm not ready to retire, and I bought many years ago. So I've already held property here of one sort or another for nearly 10 years. Now, some of that I don't still have, and the properties I've had the longest are closing in on 5 years. But the idea remains the same. I was doing loads of research over many years, rented and then purchased, and then still made mistakes, but was much smaller mistakes than I would have made if I was jumping right in. And I say this a lot, but some people are new to the channel. Some of the mistakes we made were thinking we wanted to live at the beach, directly on the beach. We thought it would be the most amazing thing ever. We never questioned that would be something we didn't like. And once we spent a year living on the beach, we realized that while that was really cool, it wasn't for us. And we really wanted to be closer to the city because we liked a lot of the city nightlife, and driving in from the beach just took too long and was a little bit expensive. And we started considering renting places in the city to offset the cost of the travel and the time. And so we ended up living in the city, and then, eventually filtered to the right place as we honed in on what was the right thing for us. And it took... Now, we did it relatively slowly, and we have dogs, as you've seen, running around, and we have children, so we're not moving super fast. We're not able to test a lot of different areas as quickly and as easily as someone who's just a single person or a couple, but the idea is the same. We tried a number of things. We got better and better at knowing exactly what we wanted and what the options are. We got better and better at the prices of things, and even our rentals got cheaper and cheaper as we went. We pay less now for a much bigger, much nicer place than we paid for a place in the inner city. Of course, there's premium prices in the inner city, but we did not get the value that we got here. And we still got a pretty good price, but we could have done better, right? And we've learned these things, and it just takes a little bit of time. And so in purchasing, we keep getting better as we learn more. And so we've done that 5 years. And now I have a number of years before retirement. So by the time I'm ready to retire, I should have really, really, really good investment into research, really good investment into the house. I'll be set up. I'll be in great position. And when I'm ready to retire, we're going to be into the community that we really like. Now, we're a little bit different because we move full time decades before we plan to retire. But the idea is still there, the same. If you're going to do this early process, you want to put in enough time to really significantly research, not only coming down on vacation and checking out a bunch of different communities and being like, I like this city, I don't like this city. You also want to live in that city, in different barrios, in the outskirts and the inside. There's a lot of things you tend to learn about yourself and learn about the community over time, and learn not just what it's like, but what it's turning into, the trajectory of different communities. And you may be a part of that trajectory, right? Here in Sutiava, in the barrio of Leon that I live in, us living here has significantly changed the fortunes of the barrio. It is now a highly desired region to move into, and we see expats moving in all the time. But we were the first expats really to move into the area with any real desire to be in Sutiava. We chose it, and everyone else followed. We literally know no expats who are here ahead of us. I guarantee there were some, definitely in the past, and some that were here before us. Now it's a big barrio, but we were one of very few early intentional settlers of expat community into this particular barrio, and now we see new people moving in constantly, right? Because it has more attention, it's very visible, and it is a very nice area. And so it's perfect, but we have changed the trajectory of this community by being here. And those are things we need to consider. Is the way that we're going to impact this community going to keep it a community that we want to be in? Whereas if we were in El Centro, the middle of Leon, for example, we couldn't really change its fortunes in such a way that we would notice the change in expat traffic, for example. Well, you might raise it by 5%, but we're not going to fundamentally change what it looks like and how it interacts with the outside world. So those are important considerations as well. So that's a really big deal, right? Is making those decisions. And it's so easy if you're going to buy early to put at risk the time that you need to make those decisions. And of course, even if you're just buying 5 years early, even if you've done all that research, that's still 5 years of maybe your lifestyle's going to change. Maybe you become less active as you become older. Maybe you have an injury or a health issue. Maybe you have a change of life for some reason. Maybe you have a change of hobby or of job, and that makes some big decisions. And by buying the house early, you're kind of locked in, especially in markets like Nicaragua, where there isn't a lot of liquidity in the market. So if you were to buy a house really early, while there's advantages to that, there are risks always to buying before you need something. And so by holding something, you're making a decision about what you're likely to need in the future. And sure, in this case, you have a lot of knowledge. You're very good about knowing what you're likely going to need in the future, but you can't be actually clairvoyant, and there are risks by not waiting until the last moment. The cone of uncertainty is larger 5 years ahead than it is 5 days ahead or 5 days after. The person who waits and moves down is going to have just so much more reliable data about exactly how much money they're going to have at retirement, exactly what the world economy looks like, exactly what the market here is looking like, exactly how communities have changed in those 5 years. And here in Nicaragua, things change rapidly. I first lived here 10 years ago, and between 2015 and 2019, the country changed very noticeably. And between 2019 and now, it has changed again very noticeably, all in positive ways. But those positive moves would affect where you may want to live, or which street you want to be on, which streets are paved, which ones have fiber internet, which ones are busy and bustling, and which ones are backwaters, which ones are blocked by the Marcadito, and which ones are about to get the new Marcadito and free the other one up with allowing traffic to go much faster, which ones are on the current bus lines, and which bus lines are comfortable because they have new buses. There's so many things that change day to day that by living in an area and having some foresight, you can make a lot better educated in guesses or prognostications about what that's going to be, and have a much more likely successful home. But you won't have the amount of time to enjoy it and prepare it and think about it and dream about it in those years leading up to retirement. So you have to balance those things, of course. So pros, clearly having the house, extra time, having more time to set it up, to get to know a community, to enjoy it, and so forth. Cons, you're lacking the time to, or at least some amount of time. Maybe you've done this, right? But you have less time to research where you want to be, less time to explore different communities and types of living and types of houses, and less time to adapt to how you're going to live here. Something that we do say quite often on the show is one of the things that for us changed dramatically. And for most people I know, by moving to a new country, especially moving from, say, the rat race in North America to the tropical laid-back paradise of Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador, and so forth, is that we change what our day-to-day lifestyle is like. When I lived in North America, I would go out for beers maybe once a week. I'd spend most nights at home watching TV or working on my computer or whatever, playing video games, of course. But I'd be home. Being at home was the predominant thing that you would do as an evening activity, and going out was common but infrequent. Here, it's quite the opposite. We're out most nights of the week, and quite often in the city, but sometimes at the beach. And over time, we've learned what mix we tend to do. We're at the beach on Tuesdays and Saturdays, but we tend to be in the city on Fridays, and Wednesdays generally at the beach, Thursdays generally in the city, and so forth. We've figured out what our pattern is quite a bit and can make much better decisions, and now understand how we like to live in this community, which involves a lot of live music, quite a surprising amount of karaoke, a lot of dancing, and I would be salsa dancing as well, which you guys never see me do because I don't like to show it, but also because the main salsa night here is when I do my live stream. Maybe something we need to adjust in the future, because I would like to get out and salsa dance quite a bit, but I don't want to jeopardize the live stream. It's so much fun. It's such a good thing that we do. But by having our lifestyle change from what it was like in the U.S., and we did salsa dance in the U.S., we did that as well when we lived in Texas, but because our lifestyles have changed so dramatically, we need to reevaluate what our house needs to be like, what our living situation. Do we need as many TVs? No, our TV spaces are diminished now, not because we can't have them, not because we can't afford them, but because they're just in the way, just more things to maintain that we don't use. That's a big change. Now, my kids play lots of video games, but not as much as I don't play anywhere near as much as I used to. So, skewing our lifestyle towards going out and skewing it away from owning lots of things. We need so much less space because we just don't choose to own very many things. living here. Those things just change, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. Very importantly, you have to come down and discover for yourself, will you have big changes, and what will those changes be? How will you modify yourself, your behavior and your personality and your preferences based on the change of your environment? And it won't happen in the first day. At first, you're going to be hit by this tourist mentality. That may last for days, weeks, or months. For some people, maybe even years, but eventually it's going to become home to you. And when it becomes home, your brain will start to look for patterns and ways to become comfortable. And those comfort things may be becoming very Nicaraguan, like we have, and going out with Nicaraguans for live music and all kinds of traditional Nicaraguan life events all the time. And that's what we tend to do. But other people are like, no, we really like watching TV. We like watching movies. We like playing video games. We stay in at night, and that's what we do. We have Dungeons and Dragons marathon 7 days a week, right? Whatever it is that works for you. Everyone's different. But those things, you need to figure out how you will modify or not modify when you get here. And if you buy a home and get into a community, coming down just part-time and going back and still being anchored in your old life, you're very unlikely to adopt to the tropics more than just going into vacation mode. And you may have a very poor vision, and maybe you have a good one, but there's a high chance that you will have a very poor vision of what your lifestyle will be like once you're here full time. And even for that, like I said, for that first year, everyone comes down and is like, I can drink on the beach and watch a sunset every day. And they do. And at some point, most people, but not all, are like, I don't actually want to do this every day. This is actually exhausting. But some people are like, this is exactly what I've always wanted. Why would I ever do anything else? And that's great. All of those things are great. But you want to have those opportunities to learn those things about yourself. And you can only really be certain about that when you give yourself time. So by waiting to buy, you have time at least to wait until you're here. If not, wait until you've been here for a year or 2 years. Rent, really research the communities, really research your lifestyle, really hone in. And yes, you won't own that house for nearly as long. But is that really so bad? As long as you're getting to paradise at the same point, as long as you're starting your retirement on the same day, as long as you're living the life that you want as early as possible, then it may not be that bad that you don't have, 5 to 7 years of having that house. Having a house feels like an attachment. And for some people, it's way more important than for others. I fall in the middle. I think I definitely have I've owned this house for a really long time, and it anchors me to a place, and it makes me feel like I'm a part of it, and it makes me, connected in a visceral way. I totally get that 100%. That's a meaningful thing, and a lot of people are affected by that, and it has real emotional value. That's a real thing. And especially if you're a retired couple, there's going to be more emotional needs to fulfill, especially with anchoring and such, because it's a shorter part of life, and you want to come down. And certainly, we talked about this in a video just the other day, you probably want to get to paradise as early as possible. Getting yourself here, yes, make that as early as years. Every year you can add of you being here, super valuable. But every year you add of owning a house in a place you're not living yet, maybe not so valuable. It has value, but it's hard to make that value offset its risks and costs. And I think for the majority of people, unless you can put in just loads of research ahead of time, loads of time to really decide on that house, you're going to be probably safer waiting until you come down, until you stay a long time, until you can really research and you're absolutely certain. And then when you get a house, you're all in. You are ready. You are prepared. You know exactly what you're doing. And it's going to be the absolute right house for about the same amount of time. That's the important thing. The amount of time you actually live in the house will be roughly similar. It's the years that you own it without living in it. And I totally understand. You come down for a vacation, you get to stay in your own house. That is a value for sure. But it also means you can't go around and explore unless you give up using your own house during that time, which would be very tempting not to do. And that's fine. But that's more and more of the research of exactly where you want to be that you won't be able to do as well. So for most people, I recommend waiting. Patience is such a virtue in this case that you'll be able to make such better decisions, because if you're, moving down at 60 and in maybe a good house, but not the perfect house, and maybe you paid more than you needed to, or you can move down at 60 and rent, and by 62, you're getting a house at much lower cost that's much more attuned to you, that's in a better community for you, and is closer or better suited to the activities you want to do. And you, both of them, you get to ride out into the sunset. You have decades to be enjoying those houses. You want it to be the perfect house for you at the best value. It just gives you the better life going forward. Thank you so much for joining me. Like and subscribe. As always, get in those comments and let me know what you think. Ask your questions. Check the show notes for all the things that we do. Please consider supporting the channel. It takes a lot to put out this show every day, and I really appreciate all of our contributors making it possible. Join us on the live stream. Support Marcela in her fight against cancer, and share on social media. Tell your friends and family about the show. Get people who are thinking about becoming expats on and watching, and I will see all of you tomorrow.